On today's episode of Tyler Rambles About Random Crap, I'm going to talk about why people are selling their 300Ls. Good morning, Internet. Can you tell I've been watching a lot of Itchy Boots lately? I don't really have a cool accent. And it's actually not even morning. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But anyway, today I want to talk about why everybody is selling their Honda CRF300L / 300L rallies. I see this question pop up a lot in the Facebook groups that I am a part of. And I think it's a valid question. If you're in the market for a 300L or a rally, and so you join a Facebook group and you start seeing a bunch of posts about people selling their 300L that has 200 miles on it, 600 miles on it, 1,200 miles on it, I can see why it would be a little bit concerning. If you've decided on this bike, or if you've just bought this bike, you really want confirmation bias. You want everybody to say this is the best bike in the world. It has zero problems. It's perfect for every situation, and it's worth 10 times what I paid for it. And so when you get the opposite, and people are like, this wasn't for me or whatever, it's concerning, and you want to know, is there any major problems with it? And when you see things like this on a bike you're looking for, it's almost like you're being personally insulted. Like 100 people could tell you look great today, but then one person looks at you weird and is like, what's up with that hair? That's the comment that you're going to remember. And so just to put it in context, the main CRF300L group that I'm a part of on Facebook has about 20,000 members. 20,000 people who are either owners of this bike, previous owners, or prospective owners. And that's a pretty decent sized pool of people, and you're not going to please 20,000 people. And so, if you saw everybody who is super happy with their bike post every day saying, hey, just so you know, I've got a 300L, I love it, no plans to sell it, then perhaps the this bike just wasn't for me posts would not be so concerning. But you don't see that because, as a rule, if people are happy with their bikes, they're just out riding their bikes. They're not on Facebook making sure that everybody who's preparing to buy one or just bought one feels good about their purchase. That's what I'm for. No. So after reading lots and lots of posts about why people are getting rid of their 300L, I decided I would just chat about some of the main reasons that I've seen. This is completely anecdotal, no scientific research. This is just me combing through forums and Facebook groups and reading people's comments. And these reasons aren't going to be in any particular order. So the first reason that I want to talk about is that this bike isn't as good on the street as people want it to be. If you buy a 300L and you want it to be your commuter, and you live and you have stretches of freeway, and you live in a place like I do where the freeway speed limit is 85 miles an hour in some places, and the drivers on that freeway are actually going 95, 100 sometimes, you're going to feel a little underpowered on the freeway. Also, if it kind of sketches you out when you're on a 300-pound bike and a 12,000 pounds truck drives by you going 95 miles an hour, and you feel that whoom, if that is unsettling to you and you don't like it and you're in those situations a lot, then this bike is probably going to start feeling like not the bike for you. So that is the first reason that I see. I mean, not the top reason, like I said, there's no top in this list, but that is the first one that I want to talk about. This bike just is not a freeway bike. It can go on the freeway. Depending on where you are, it may easily exceed the speed limits of the freeway. For me, if my main purpose of this bike most of the time was to be going 80 miles an hour on a freeway, I would probably sell it too. The second reason I want to talk about that people sell it is just the opposite. This bike is not as good on dirt as people were hoping or expecting. And these first two should be fairly obvious, you know? It's a dual sport. It's not going to be the best street bike. It's not going to be the best dirt bike. It's kind of in the middle. But nevertheless, when you have people, especially when a new bike comes out, this one's just been out about 2 years now. And when it came out, people were raving. And this is the unicorn. It can do everything. And so when people kind of believe that hype, they're like, oh, sweet. I'm going to be able to get on the freeway, go 95 miles an hour to my favorite trails, and then I'm going to be able to totally blow all my KTM friends away. Obviously, it's not that. So if people come to this bike from, especially people who have ridden a lot of other dirt bikes, a lot of times they're disappointed with the suspension. Obviously, that's a big one with this bike, with the power. And so they get in it and they just feel like, oh, it just doesn't have enough grunt, suspension sucks, and they start doing the math and they say, okay, it's going to cost me $1,200 to redo the suspension, it's going to cost me $400 to redo the exhaust, it's going to cost me a couple $100 to get my ECU remapped, and they say, oh, by the time I'm done with this, I could have the KTM that I really want, that, you know, costs $11,000 out of the gate, but has all that stuff. So they just, you know, change their mind and they say, okay, screw this, I'm going with the more dirt-oriented dual sport that I really wanted in the first place. So there's that reason. I mean, this is not, you know, the best dirt bike. For my needs, it's plenty adequate, but for a lot of people's, it's not. So yeah, I would say that those, if I had to pick the top two, I would say those are them. You know, people are like, oh, I thought I'd be riding more dirt. I'm always on the road. I need to get more street-oriented bike. Or I'm really never on the street. I only wanted this for dirt. I'm going to go with something more dirt-oriented. But there are a few other reasons why people sell this bike. And to understand those, I think we need to understand why someone bought the bike in the first place. Again, we talked about the first two. If you bought it as a commuter, it's not the best. If you bought it as a pure dirt bike, it's not the best. But the thing about the 300L is it is a very good candidate for a first bike. And for a lot of people, it is a first bike, or it's a first dual sport. You know, maybe somebody's been street for a long time, and they're like, I've been seeing all this stuff about dual sporting and adventure riding, and I want to get into it. And so they buy this because it is a great bike to learn on and to start on. And so this is their first bike. And then one of two things happens. One, they never ride it. You see that a lot. Oh, I just didn't ride this as much as I thought I would, or as I wanted to, or life got in the way. You know, it just did not become the hobby that they daydreamed about, and so they give it up. Happens all the time. Or two, they love it and quickly decide they want something better. That they love it. They love riding on the dirt, but you know, they decide, you know, I can already tell I want a 450 or a 700 or a 1200 or whatever. So yeah, this is their first bike, and either they didn't like the sport or they liked it a lot and decided that they had outgrown the 300L. And then you have a group of people that I believe their real hobby isn't riding motorcycles as much. I mean, the riding part is incidental, but what they really love doing is the tinkering, the mods. You see a lot of these 300Ls that are just tricked out. I mean, that don't have a lot of miles on them, but they have a full Yoshi exhaust. They have, you know, the greatest suspension that money can buy. They've got the crash bars, they've got the nice skid plate, they've got the raised handlebars and the pillow top grips and the you know, a lot of the stuff that I have, but they just, the fun part for them, it seems, is actually doing the mods. And then they get to a point where there's really nothing else you can do to this bike, and they get bored. So they start looking for another bike to do the same thing to. And I think that's great. If that's your hobby, that's what you like to do. Who is anybody to judge how anybody else spends their free time or their expendable income? You know, if you like to golf and you buy a $3,000 set of golf clubs and spend $250 a round to golf on the best courses, or if if you're a gamer and you spend $6,000 on a video card to go in your $20,000 rig so you can play the latest greatest game at the highest, you know, frames per minute, whatever, frames per second I guess it is these days, then that is awesome. You know, do what you want with your time and your money as you see fit. But that's again, this is just my observation. It seems like some people's hobby is more the wrenching and the modding, and let's see how awesome we can make this thing, versus I just love this bike and I never want to part with it. And other reasons why people sell these are just life changes. You know, you see a lot of, oh, just had a baby and I just don't have the time anymore, or just got a new job, or I'm moving, or I've injured myself, or you know, I've gotten sick, sadly, and this is just not going to be able to be a part of my life anymore. All those reasons I've seen. And again, when you have a pool of 20,000 people in one Facebook group that I'm looking at, you can see life happen to many of them. And a lot of times, many times, it has nothing to do with, you know, I hate this bike. It's just, you know, I can't ride it right now. So if you are one of these people who is in the market for a 300L or a 300L rally, or perhaps you just bought a 300L or a 300L rally and you're looking at posts of people selling their bike and it's concerning you, the first thing I would recommend you do is think about those first two reasons I gave why people sell these bikes. Because it's not good enough on the road, it's not good enough on the dirt. And ask yourself if those two things are going to be a problem for you. If you already know that you're never going to need to ride this bike over 80 miles an hour, then I think you are fine on the road front, personally. If you already know that you're not planning on, you know, trying to ride dirt competitively, and I don't mean in competitions, I just mean at that level, like really hardcore dirt. If you know you're not that person, then I think you're okay on reason number two. Reason number three, if you're brand new to biking, then, you know, I'd say you're just gonna have to try it and see. That said, most likely if you buy a brand new 300L or brand new any bike and you decide you don't like it, just plan on losing some money, because most likely you're not going to recoup the taxes, the fees, the dealer fees, the freight charges, all those types of things that really crank up your price at a dealership. So if you're just unsure about the sport at all, and you're thinking about getting into it, and you want to see if you like riding motorcycles, period, look for a good deal on a used dual sport. Like a 250L would be a great one. You can probably find those a lot more easily than a 300L. Or, you know, a KLX or a XT250 or a WR250. WRs are probably pretty hard to find right now just because they're not produced anymore and everybody loves them. But if you can find a used dual sport, they hold their value, generally speaking, very well. If they're in good condition and you do the maintenance on it and you keep it nice, you'll probably be able to sell it for at least as much as you bought it for, maybe more if you're able to find a good deal. So that's the one recommendation I'd have if you are not even sure if you're going to like dual sporting. Maybe don't start with a brand new, hard to find dual sport. And was the other thing I talked about. Oh, if you just like tinkering with bikes, then you know, this is a good bike to tinker with. But again, you know, personally, if I was, you know, a tinkerer and I wanted to do it just for the mods, I probably wouldn't do it on a brand new, hard to find model. But on the flip side, that's probably part of the fun. You know, you track down this hard to find bike and then you make it as cool as it can be. And then as far as life changes, that's going to happen regardless. I mean, another question you can ask yourself if you're looking at people who are selling their bikes is, would this person sell another bike in the same class? You know, if people were like selling these 300Ls in droves to go buy the KLX 300, then that would be concerning, more concerning. But I think a lot of the people who are selling the 300L are either going away from bikes entirely, or they're going towards a bike that's in a completely different class. If you already know you want something in the 300L's class, either the 300L or the 300L Rally, and somebody's selling it because they want something in a different class, then you're really not in the same mind space as them, so you don't need to worry about it. One reason that I just have not seen when I look at these, why am I selling the 300L, is that it's just having mechanical problems. I've never seen anybody complain. It was just like, I'm just fed up, one problem after another, I got to get rid of this bike and get something more reliable. I just don't think you're going to see that. I mean, yes, I think Honda has the potential of putting out lemons. I just personally haven't seen that issue come up. I've seen people have odd problems. Those just aren't the people who happen to be selling their bikes. You know, it's just like, oh, the clutch burned out after a week. I think that's kind of a lemon thing on the clutch, and so they take it back to the dealer and get a new clutch, and away they go. But by and large, I think it's a very safe bet mechanically. You just have to look at the capabilities of the bike and the capabilities that you're looking for in your new toy. For me, this bike is just ideal. And yes, I too have done a ton of mods, and yes, I too enjoy that aspect of the hobby. But for me, the mods came after I already knew that I really loved this bike and wanted to keep it for a long time. So the last bit of advice I would have to anybody in the market for a 300L Rally, really any bike, but I'm talking about these right now, is when you get it, do a fair bit of riding on it before you do anything to it. You know, people in motorcycle communities throw around the phrase, it's a whole new bike, a lot. You know, I put a new exhaust on it, it's a whole new bike. I put new cams on it, it's a whole new bike. I put new shocks on it, it's a whole new bike. And I just don't buy that. I think if you hate this bike the way it rides right out of the gate, then nothing you do to it is going to make you love it. But if you like everything a lot, but you know, maybe you just want a little more punch in the mid-range, then yeah, like a different exhaust with an ECU remap could change something like that. But again, it's not going to make you love a bike that you hate. If you love everything about the bike but it's just way too bouncy for you, then yes, a suspension upgrade can definitely fix that problem. But if you get it and you're immediately asking questions in forums like, what can I do to get this bike, you know, go 90 miles an hour more easily, then my recommendation would be, don't spend thousands of dollars trying to make this bike have capabilities that it just doesn't have. Find something that out of the box is closer to what you want. Out of the box, this bike was extremely close to everything that I wanted, power-wise, weight-wise, capability-wise, gas tank-wise. All those things were ideal for me. And so yes, I eventually updated the suspension, and I do like that upgrade. It made everything a lot nicer, but it didn't turn it into a whole new bike. This is still the bike that I love. I just happen to like the way the suspension handles a little bit more. And I think it's important to remember that for most of us, or at least a lot of us, this is a hobby, this is a fun adventure, this is a stress reliever, this is therapy, whatever. And And if you think that a different bike or even a different hobby can fulfill those needs for you better, by all means do it. I'm not going to tell you that this bike is the perfect bike for where you are in your life right now, but it happens to be the perfect bike for me for where I am in my life right now. And that is all I have to say about that. As always, I appreciate you watching my videos. Subscribe if you feel like it, and ride safe.